Culture and ideal emotions. Why do some emotions become focal in a particular culture? ch6 and her colleagues have offered one answer in their affect valuation theory. They argue that emotions that promote important cultural ideals are valued and will tend to play a more prominent role in the social lives of individuals. For example, in the United States, excitement is greatly valued because it enables people to pursue a cultural ideal of independent action and self-expression. In contrast, many East Asian cultures attach greater value to feelings of calmness and contentedness because these emotions make it easier for individuals to fit into harmonious relationships. These cultural differences in which emotions are most valued translate into variations in emotional behavior. Americans, for example, are more likely than East Asians to participate in exciting but risky recreational practices, such as mountain biking, to advertise consumer products with broad smiles of excitement, to get addicted to excitement-enhancing drugs, cocaine, to express preferences for upbeat, exciting music rather than soothing, slower songs, and to read children's books that feature highly excited protagonists. In responding to emotional stimuli, people from independent cultures are more likely to show intense smiles of excitement. Executives, university leaders, and politicians in the West tend to display bigger, more intense smiles in the photos they put out to the public than do those in East Asian cultures. These descriptions of cultural variations are averages, of course. You probably know, or may be, someone of East Asian ancestry who loves to bungee jump or jump into the mosh pit at a rock show, and you'd probably also know someone of US or European ancestry who'd rather read poetry or listen to Haydn or Schubert than ride a mountain bike or go cliff diving. But these notable average differences in emotional behavior, Sy maintains, derive from the value placed on excitement in the West and contentment in the East. It's these differences in value that lead people from many parts of the world to be bemused by American excitability. Indians, for example, sometimes refer affectionately to Americans as dogs because they're always saying, wow, wow. Culture and valuing emotion. People in the United States have been found to engage in thrilling and dangerous recreational practices, such as skateboarding, because of the value they place upon feeling excited. Focal emotion, an emotion that is especially common within a particular culture. Box 6.2, focus on new social media. Focal emotions expressed in emoji. It is estimated that people send over 6 billion emoji each day in their online communications. Most people use some kind of emoji to communicate each day, whether they are texting, commenting on Facebook, or sharing photos on Instagram. Why do we send emoji? To be sarcastic? To be humorous? To express a thought or feeling we think can convey as well with words? Actually, according to recent studies, the answer is rather straightforward. We send emoji, the most popular being iconic representations of emotion, such as the heart or smiley face, to express how we feel about what is being communicated online. You might share a heart emoji to convey affection and gratitude for the support someone has shown online, or a laughter emoji to convey your amusement at what someone has shared. Recently, a team at Facebook led by illustrator Matt Jones and one of his textbook's authors, Dr. Keltner, helped design a set of science-based emoji that express human emotions that have been studied in the recent scientific literature. In this project, Jones produced emoji-like drawings based on Charles Darwin's descriptions of emotions, as well as findings characterizing the facial and head movements that express emotions such as awe, love, and sympathy. A design team at Facebook then produced animated emoji from these sketches called Finch emoji. Table 6.1 shows 3 examples of Jones's drawing of an emotion and the corresponding animated Finch emoji. Do people from different countries vary in terms of which emotions they share through Facebook with the Finch emoji? Figure 6.2 shows 2 maps of emoji usage representing the sharing of the love and sympathy Finch emoji from over 120 million individuals across 122 nations during 1 month in 2012. Countries in more purple colors are those in which the emotion in question was more likely to be shared than other emotions, meaning that that emotion might be thought of as a focal emotion in the culture. The citizens of countries depicted in pinker colors shared less of that emotion compared with other emotions. Though the love emoji was the most commonly shared emoji overall, some countries' citizens shared it more than others. Stereotypes hold that certain Mediterranean cultures, such as Italy, are known for romance and that Brazil is a highly affectionate, passionate culture. Love might be thought of as a focal emotion in these countries. Figure 6.2a supports those claims. Now take a look at Figure 6.2b, the sympathy map. One can't help but be struck by the contrast between the United States, known for its high proportion of people in prison and high rates of violent crime, where the sympathy emoji wasn't shared as much, and Canada, a stereotypically peaceful and considerate country, where the emoji was shared a lot. Table 6.1. Okay, so the awe emoji, you can see it's like their mouth is open and their eyebrows are up and they're looking upward. The love emoji, they're like looking forward with their head tilted to the side, their eyebrows raised and smiling. And the sympathy emoji, they're looking down to the side, the eyebrow tips in the center are like turned upward, and their mouth is like open downward. Not quite like a frown, but it's like opened. Figure 6.2, love and sympathy maps. A, love map. B, sympathy map. Culture and display rules. Various cultures differ in their display rules. Culturally specific rules that govern how, when, and to whom people express emotion. 1969. People can de-intensify their emotional expression. For example, suppress the urge to laugh at a friend fumbling a romantic quest. People can intensify their expression, smile widely upon taking the first bite of yet another culinary disaster concocted by a roommate, for instance. They can mask their negative emotions with a polite smile, and they can neutralize their expression with a poker face. Here's one example of how culturally specific display rules shape emotional expression. In many Asian cultures, it's inappropriate to speak of personal enthusiasms. In these cultures, people may also de-intensify their expressions of pleasure at personal success. Across dozens of cultures, people from interdependent cultures report being more likely to suppress positive emotional expression than people from independent cultures, and to temper their experience of positive emotion with negative emotions. Display rule, a culturally specific rule that governs how, when, and to whom people express emotion. Looking back, Darwin inspired dozens of studies finding that human emotional expression is universal, is seen in other species, and is evident in those blind from birth. At the same time, cultures vary in the emotions that are focal, having richer vocabularies for those emotions and expressing them more in their nonverbal behavior. People of different cultures vary in the emotions they value, and cultures differ in how they regulate emotions with specific display rules, the rules governing how and when to express emotions. Neutralizing expressions. In accordance with the display rules of poker, this woman masks any feelings about her cards with a neutral poker face. Emotions and social relationships. Edouard Muybridge was one of the most innovative photographers in the history of the art, known for his cold, analytic photos of Yosemite and human bodies in motion. To pay his bills, he ran a rare bookstore with his brother during the gold rush era in San Francisco. On one trip back east in search of rare books, the driver of Muybridge's stagecoach lost control, and Muybridge was hurled out of the coach, smashing headfirst into a tree. After the accident, he seemed like a different man. Although his language and reasoning abilities remained intact, he became remote, aloof, and cold. He had trouble in his family life, at work, and in feeling like part of society. What caused Muybridge's social difficulties? Social neuroscience provides one answer. We now know that Muybridge damaged his orbitofrontal cortex, a region of the frontal lobes right behind the eye sockets. People who damage this area lose the ability to rely on their emotions to act in ways that fit their current situation, and as a result, their relations with their spouses, children, friends, and work colleagues often go awry. The difficulties these patients endure tell us that our emotions act like a language that guides our social interactions. They are the grammar of social relationships. Our fleeting expressions of emotion are more than just momentary readouts of how we feel. They coordinate our interactions with others, whether playing on a team, reconciling with a friend, soothing a distressed child, or flirting. Box 6.3, see page 186. Knowing how others feel provides critical information to guide our own socially savvy action. In fact, studies find that at every stage of life, people who are aware of their own feelings and those of other people fare better in their social relationships. They have more friends at age 5, get along better with romantic partners in their 30s, and do better at work in the middle of life. In this section, we follow the sad tale of Édouard Muybridge to detail how emotions enable strong relationships. Emotions in personal relationships. Emotions often determine the quality and stability of romantic relationships. If this couple can maintain the humor and mirth and other positive emotions throughout their relationship, they will be less likely to separate. Promoting commitment. After his accident, Muybridge struggled with his commitment to the welfare of others. He felt distant from his wife, Flora. He never developed an attachment to his young son. Successful long-term relationships require that we solve what economist Robert Frank refers to as the commitment problem. Our long-term relationships require that we sacrifice for others even when we are tempted to do otherwise. 1988. When we consider how common divorce is, see Chapter 10, it's clear that this is no simple task. Lacking the ability to feel the appropriate emotions, Muybridge felt little commitment to the people around him, like psychopaths. Emotions help solve the commitment problem in two ways. First, the expression of certain emotions signals our commitment to others' well-being. For example, a timely expression of sympathy indicates that we are concerned about the person's welfare and will make sacrifices on his or her behalf if need be. Second, emotions can motivate us to put aside our own self-interest and act in ways that prioritize the welfare of others. Feelings of guilt can be painful, but they often lead us to do things, apologize, make amends, sacrifice, that benefit others. Anger can be profoundly unpleasant, but it can motivate us to defend someone who has been wronged, even at great cost to ourselves. It turns out that there's a chemical that fosters commitment in long-term relationships. Oxytocin is produced in the hypothalamus and released into the brain and bloodstream. In non-human species, oxytocin promotes commitment, or what is called pair bonding, the preference for one mate over desirable alternatives. When scientists give montane voles who do not display pair bonding an injection of oxytocin, they stay close to a sexual partner, even when desirable voles are placed nearby. In experiments with humans, social psychologists have administered oxytocin via a nasal spray to some participants and a saline solution, the control, to others and compared the effects. When administered oxytocin, people are more generous and cooperative, they look more consistently at other people's faces, and they score higher on tests of empathy. You might think that oxytocin could be a solution to today's political problems. Just give political adversaries a whiff of oxytocin, and their animosity might subside. Alas, it's not so simple. Karsten de Drew and his colleagues have shown that oxytocin largely promotes commitment and generosity toward one's own group, but can actually enhance biases against outgroups. You may also be wondering whether oxytocin might help with commitment problems closer to home, namely in romantic relationships. Here the answer is more promising. One experiment found that couples solved their conflicts more constructively after having inhaled oxytocin. The effect of oxytocin on commitment. Research demonstrating that oxytocin promotes commitment and love might have had something to do with the development of the new perfume, Pheromax, whose selling feature is the oxytocin it included in its chemical makeup. Box 7.3. Focus on romance. Flirtation. Flirting is the pattern of behavior, both verbal and nonverbal, conscious and at times non-conscious, that communicates attraction to a potential romantic partner. Researchers David Givens and Timothy Perper spend hundreds of hours in singles bars charting the flirtatious behaviors that predict romantic encounters. They found that in the initial attention-getting phase, men roll their shoulders and engage in exaggerated motions to show off their physical size, raising their arms to let others admire their well-developed pecs and washboard abs. Women smile coyly, preen, flip their hair, and walk with arched back and swaying hips. In the recognition phase, the potential romantic partners lock their gaze on each other, expressing interest by raised eyebrows, sing-song voices, and laughter. In the touching phase, the potential romantic partners move close, and they create opportunities to touch with provocative brushes of the arm, pats on the shoulder, or not-so-accidental bumps against one another. Finally, in the keeping time phase, the potential partners express and assess each other's interest by lining up their actions. When they are mutually interested, their glances, gestures, and laughter mirror each other's, and their shoulders and faces align. Flirting. Can you tell from the woman's nonverbal language what she is trying to convey? Okay, so she's sitting at a table across from her guy, and she's leaned forward. Her face is on her hands, and she's smiling. Looks like she's making eye contact. Coordinating actions with others. One of the first signs of Muybridge's social difficulties was his struggles at work. In his bookstore, he had trouble keeping promises, honoring contracts, and even engaging in polite exchanges with customers. Expressing emotions in timely ways and knowing the emotions of others, it's kind of like attunement, is necessary for coordinating our collaborative actions with others. Before infants can tell their parents what they like and don't like, they rely on their smiles, coos, and laughs to express delight to their parents for things they have done that are pleasing. The same is true in our adult social lives. Smiles, laughs, warm pats on the back, and interested vocalizations are ways we express our approval of what others are doing. Consider the coordinating function of emotions by examining another modality of expression, touch. A deftly placed touch can encourage people or dissuade them from inappropriate behavior. A tactile expression of gratitude or love rewards others for actions we find desirable. In one study demonstrating this idea, a toucher and a touchee sat at a table with a black curtain between them, preventing all communication other than touch between the two. The toucher attempted to convey different emotions by making contact with the touchee for 1 second on the forearm, for example, smoothly stroking the arm to convey compassion, or lightly clasping and shaking the arm a bit to convey gratitude. Upon being touched, the touchee selected which emotion had been communicated from a list of emotion terms. As you can see in Figure 6.3, participants could reliably communicate love, sympathy, and gratitude with brief tactile contact, all emotions that convey commitment and provide rewarding experiences to others. Figure 6.3. Communicating emotion through touch. With a brief touch to the forearm, participants in this study could reliably communicate different emotions to a stranger. Okay, so it's a paired bar graph, and on the x-axis, it has paired bars for compassion, gratitude, love, anger, fear, and disgust. And on the y-axis, from 0 to 70% is the percentage of participants choosing the correct emotion. So you can see that about 50 to 60% of participants were able to choose the correct emotion, and about 15% chose the correct emotion as the second choice. Other research shows how the right kind of touch can prompt people to act collaboratively. For example, Michael Krause and his colleagues coded all the touches, high fives, fist bumps, head slaps, and bear hugs that basketball teammates in the NBA engaged in during one game at the beginning of the 2008 season. Each player touched his teammates for only about an average of 2 seconds during the game. Still, teams who touched more early in the season played better later in the season, even when controlling for how well the team was playing in the game in which the touch was coded, how much money the players were making, and the preseason expectations for the team. Naturally, this study was not a pure experiment in the sense that players were randomly assigned to touch their teammates or not, and this weakens the inferences to be drawn from its results. But its results converge with an intriguing study of touch promoting collaboration in the classroom. In the study, Teachers were randomly assigned to touch some students in a friendly fashion and to not touch others. 2004. Students who were touched were much more likely to go to the chalkboard to solve a difficult problem the teacher had assigned. Touch and cooperation on the basketball court. Athletic teams in which teammates touch each other more play better. In 2000, the USA basketball team celebrated the Olympic gold medal with many kinds of touch. They're all kind of like putting their hands to the center with their arms thrust upward, of course, victoriously. Knowing our place in groups. Like many people with damaged frontal lobes, Edouard Muybridge became an outcast with little sense of connection to others. He cared little for social outings. He stopped dressing in accord with the fashion of his times, and, lacking the guidance of emotions, he had little sense of his place in society. Certain emotions help us feel part of larger social collectives. The best example of this is the emotion of awe, the feeling of being in the presence of something vast that transcends our understanding of the world. We often feel awe in highly collective situations, at political rallies, sporting events, concerts, artistic events, and dance performances. Many stimuli that elicit awe, music, inspiring leaders, art, and religious rituals, are central to the core values and institutions of a culture. And studies find that compared with experiences of other positive emotions, brief experiences of awe, for example, watching an awe-inspiring nature video, or taking a stroll amid tall trees or standing near a replica of a T-Rex, increase people's sense of belonging with others. People feeling awe are more likely to define themselves in terms of collective traits. I am an environmentalist, and report feeling embedded in stronger, more interconnected social networks. Emotions not only help us identify with certain groups, they also enable us to find our place or status within social groups. Join just about any kind of group, a sorority or fraternity, a political or recreational group, or a team, and you'll quickly find that you have a rank or position within that group. People rely heavily on emotional expressions to signal their status in hierarchies. Jessica Tracy and her colleagues have found that people's nonverbal displays of pride signal that person's elevated status in different cultures. People who display pride nonverbally are also more likely to be imitated and followed by other individuals. In one study, participants were more likely to copy the answer on a test of a Confederate displaying pride rather than other emotions. Anger is another emotion that can signal dominance and, much like pride, its expression can lead people to gain power and status. For example, when negotiators express anger, they are more likely to get their way and prompt more subordinate behaviors in their counterparts. An old adage of trial lawyers is that when you have the law on your side, you should argue the law. When you have the facts on your side, you should argue the facts. And when you have neither on your side, you should pound the table. I brought out the meekness in others. Someone in the judgment day. I guess they're an angry person. Looking back, emotions are the grammar of our social interactions. Emotions serve to communicate our commitment to others and build trust. Our emotional expressions, such as touch, serve as rewards in interactions and help coordinate behavior between people. Emotions help us know our place within groups. Emotions and understanding the social world. Many of our most important decisions, what job to take, whom to marry, which neighborhood to live in, rely on gut feelings. Philosophers have long argued that this is not a good thing. Our emotions, according to this line of thought, are less sophisticated than our logic and higher reasoning and can lead to rash, misguided decisions. The metaphors we use to describe our feelings betray this belief about emotion. We speak of emotions as forms of insanity, I'm madly in love, and disease, I'm sick with envy, rather than forms of clarity and health. Perhaps we are better off when reason is the master of our passions. It certainly is true that emotions bias how we see the world, but psychologists have made the case that this is often, and even typically, a good thing. Emotions prioritize the information we should focus on and factor into our decisions and actions. Sometimes this leads to problematic biases, but often emotions guide perception, reasoning, and judgment in ways that enable quick and adaptive responses to challenges and opportunities in the environment. Reason is and ought to be the slave of passion, David Hume, Scottish philosopher. Emotions influence perception. After the death of a loved one, bereaved individuals often experience recurring and profound sadness for many months and very often longer. Their perceptions are imbued with the qualities of sadness. A piece of music may trigger recollections of a first date. A room or object in the house will prompt memories of the past. A falling leaf may elicit thoughts about the shortness of life. The idea that emotions influence perception is found in color-based metaphors that portray emotions as lenses through which we perceive our circumstances. Sadness is blue. Anger makes us see red. Happiness has us looking at the world through rose-colored glasses. We perceive events, in other words, in ways that are consistent with the emotions we're currently feeling. To explore this idea empirically, researchers in one study had participants listen to uplifting music by Mozart or melancholy music by Mahler. 1994. Feeling either happy or sad, participants then completed a lexical decision task, judging whether strings of letters were words or non-words. When feeling happy, participants were quicker to identify happy words, such as delight, than sad words, weep, or positive words unrelated to happiness, calm. When feeling sad, participants were quicker to identify the sad words than the happy words or the negative words unrelated to sadness, injury. Emotions can also influence broader judgments, such as our sense that our circumstances are fair or safe or that they're unfair or dangerous. In one study conducted 2 months after the 9/11 terrorist attacks, participants were asked to write about how the attacks had made them feel either angry or frightened. Those primed to feel fear not only judged future terrorist attacks to be more likely than participants primed to feel anger, but also reported that they themselves were more likely to be victimized by different threats, such as dying in a flu epidemic. Fear can lead us to exaggerate the sense of danger around us. Studies of anger also highlight the problematic influence emotions can have on perception. When we experience frustration at school or at work and return to our friends and loved ones at the end of the day, we may be quicker to perceive potential affront and hostile intent in others' actions. In one study that brings this notion to life, participants first wrote about a memory that made them feel either angry, disgusted, or sad. They then briefly viewed a photograph of a man who was holding either a gun or a neutral object. Anger, but not disgust or sadness, made participants more likely to identify the neutral object as a gun, but not misidentify the gun as a neutral object. Anger primes us to perceive threat and aggression. Anger and perceived threat. Police officers are known to experience high levels of stress, which interferes with sleep and can lead to irritability, frustration, and anger. There are some who believe that it is this anger that can lead police officers to misinterpret tense encounters with civilians, sometimes leading to tragic results. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself, nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror which paralyzes needed efforts to convert retreat into advance. Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Emotions influence reasoning. People tend to assume that positive emotions prompt simplistic or lazy thinking. Think of any highly creative person, such as Vincent van Gogh, Virginia Woolf, Toni Morrison, or Charles Darwin, and you're likely to imagine that their creative acts were produced during moments of struggle, tension, soberness, and even despair. Alice Eisen argued that this view of creativity is wrong, and that happiness, or being in a good mood more generally, prompts people to reason in ways that are flexible and creative. In her studies, Eisen induced positive emotion in her participants with trivial events. She gave them little bags of candy, or made sure that they would find a dime she had placed in their path. These subtle ways of making participants feel good produced striking changes in their reasoning. When given one word, such as carpet, and asked to generate a related word, people feeling positive emotions came up with more novel associations, fresh, or texture, than people in a neutral state, who tended to produce more common responses, such as rug. Participants in a good mood categorized objects in more inclusive ways, rating fringe members of categories, like cane or purse as an example of clothing, as better members of that category than people in a neutral state, whose categories tended to be more narrowly defined. These effects of positive emotion have important social consequences. Negotiators in a positive mood are more likely to reach an optimal agreement that incorporates the interests of both sides, because positive moods allow opponents to think flexibly about the positions and interests of the other side. 1986. Building on these findings, Barbara Fredrickson has advanced her broaden and build hypothesis. Here, the central idea is that whereas negative emotions narrow our attention on the details of what we are perceiving, positive emotions broaden our patterns of thinking in ways that help us expand our understanding of the world and build our social relationships. In research inspired by this hypothesis, participants led to feel positive emotions, for example, by watching amusing films, thought of a wider range of ways to respond to different situations than participants feeling negative emotions or a neutral state. When asked to pick one of two figures in the bottom row of figure 6.4 to match the target stimulus in the top row, participants feeling positive emotion chose the less obvious choice, the one that is similar in its global arrangement, the three triangles, rather than the one that is similar in specific details, the four squares. These broadening patterns of thought extend to ways of thinking about others that build stronger ties. For example, people feeling positive emotion rate themselves as more similar to outgroup members, and they see themselves as sharing deeper similarities with their romantic partners. Figure 6.4, Global and Local Decision Task. Participants feeling positive emotion tend to choose the three triangle figure rather than the four square figure, as most resembling the three square figure.